Hello, everybody. Welcome to Two Bye Guys. I'm Rob. I'm here with two guests at once today. Double whammy, double header. My guests today are the organizers of Sluts Party in Chicago, a monthly sex positive rave that centers bi and queer people in the Chicago nightlife scene. Welcome to Two Bye Guys, John McCray Jones and Natalie Moe. Hi, welcome.
Hi, thanks for
Hey,
having us.
yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm excited for you to be here. We connected somewhere on Instagram last year in the last season, and had to wait till now. But I'm excited to hear about this party. So I kind of want to just like get right into it and hear about the party, and we'll learn more about you guys and your backgrounds as we go, I think. So tell me just about like what is Sluts Party and how did it come about?
Yeah, so John initially got the idea for Sluts Party because there just aren't really any spaces in Chicago where you can be sex positive, you can explore your sexuality, but there isn't quite the pressure to play. Um, because we've traveled all over going to sex clubs, play parties, and sometimes it's just nice to be able to do the part of the party where you're meeting people and getting to know people and making connections without the kind of like, do I want to go off into a room and play? And that was definitely a big thing for me being demisexual, just kind of not always feeling like I'm connecting enough with someone to play, but still wanting to connect with other sex positive people and E&M people and that sort of thing. So we
Mhm.
had our first party in June 2023, and it's really blown up since that our community has expanded quite a bit. And within that, it's been really cool to create a space that really centers bi and pan people. Because so much of our philosophy and values is we really wanted a queer community where all queer identities are accepted. Because sadly, there's so many, places that are advertised as queer spaces, but myself as a femme isn't welcome, or John as a black man isn't welcome. And overall,
Mhm.
as a bi person, a lot of times you kind of don't fit into the straight or the gay club. So it's been really cool to curate this space where bisexuality is not just a part of it, but it's celebrated too.
Yeah, I love it. John, I have so many questions already, but anything to add, John?
For me, we went to House of Yes in New York and Pervert Party in Mexico
Mhm.
City, and there was all of these amazing spaces that were sex positive around the country and even like internationally, like Torture Garden in London. And we kept finding these spaces when we traveled, especially when we originally lived in Milwaukee. We would leave what Natalie like 4 or 5 times a year to find
Yeah.
queer sex positive spaces. But for a city as massive as Chicago, there wasn't that space, and we kept having connections with people in field, and we hosted private house parties with 30, 40 people in our two-bedroom apartment. It was
Mm.
packed. It was ridiculous. And we hosted these bi play parties, and people were like, well, this is really cool, but I wish that there was like a dance party or a third place that we can meet that wasn't always a play event. And I started like putting these pieces together of all these really fun dance parties that we've experienced around the country, and Chicago not having that, and also the bi sex parties we were hosting in our apartment. And we were like, hey, why don't we create this party ourselves? So in
Yeah.
late April and May of 2024, we started working together to with our friend Bree, who I wish she could be on this podcast too. We started putting the pieces together of what a bi-centered, sex-positive dance party without sex on site looks like. And then we got really lucky. We found a venue hosted by a bi black man named Don Brown and Never Have I Ever. And he was a former DJ. And he basically was like, I love the idea that what you guys are doing. Chicago has a lot of gay men spaces and a couple like sapphic parties, but there was really
Mm.
nothing that centers bi and pan people. And we were like, he was like, yeah, as a bi man, I feel seen in your party and in your spaces. I would love to host your inaugural party, and then we can see where our relationship goes after that. So he brought us in for our Barbie party in that was June, end of June during Pride weekend. The party was a huge success. leading up to it, we were super nervous because we had what 3 weeks to sell tickets for the party from the
Uh-huh.
day that Dom gave us the venue to the day that we hosted the party. We were putting up flyers all around Boys Town. We were on field advertising this to all the bi
Wow.
sex positive people we can find. We were so scared that this party was going to flop, and we're like, maybe this is just our echo chamber of horny bisexuals that we know who would be interested in this. But the first party sold out. We had over 1,000 followers before we hosted the actual party. So what, like 360 tickets, and it was a massive success. And the
Wow.
party really blew up after that.
Wow. That's huge. And it's so hard. Like, I find it's hard to get people out to these things. Like in New York, there is NSFW, and I've interviewed Daniel Saint on here, and that was similar to what he was doing, trying to create a bi specific and bi focused space. And I think it's like getting traction, but at the beginning, he struggled to get people to the buy part of it, like to the buy specific events. And I'm not sure why. So it's amazing to hear that there was so much interest there, and that you're bringing it to Chicago. I guess that's the goal, is like do this all over, right?
Hmm.
Tell me about more about your travels, like the pervert party in Mexico City you met. Is that what it was called? Like, what was
Yeah.
that like? And where else have you like explored these scenes all over the world?
Do you want
Yeah.
to take this one out, or do you want to go first?
I mean, I guess kind of our origins with all of this, exploring sex positivity, non monogamy, all of that sort of stuff, was actually in like traditional swinger clubs.
Uh-huh.
We were brand new to non monogamy and we were traveling a lot because we lived in Milwaukee and there wasn't much of like a queer or non monogamous scene there. And we were just trying out all these different sex clubs when we traveled. And that's really what, people always ask, like, how are you guys so good with consent? How are you so good with coming up with these policies that keep people safe? And it really is built upon, sadly, those bad experiences of, going to all these swinger clubs and just always being like, oh man, like this, something was missing, or this didn't feel good, or that wasn't affirming,
Mhm. Mhm.
and that sort of thing. So that's kind of like the origins, but I think John could probably dive a little bit more into like more recent events that inspired this.
Yeah, and kind of building off what Natalie said, we actually started off in the kink community.
Mm.
Then we saw not movie, the TV show Sex Life on Netflix.
Huh.
Really fun, and they had a sex party scene. And I remember me and Natalie were watching it, and at first, this is when we were still monogamish. We have never been fully monogamous in our relationship. We had this like hall pass. We called it consensual cheating because we didn't even know the non-monogamy community existed. So we thought we were doing our own thing.
Mhm.
And we watched this Netflix series called Sex Life. And during one of the episodes, she goes to a sex party, and me and Natalie were like, we would never do that. Oh my god, this is weird. But then, like as the scene was going on, it kind of was like, well, this is kind of hot. And Natalie was like, this is kind of hot. And then we were like, wait, are you into this? And then she was like, I am if you are. And that sparked conversations. And back when I was identifying as a straight man, it just happened a month later. Me and some friends went to the Gay 90s in Minneapolis, if you're familiar with that space.
No.
It's this massive queer venue. It's like four different floors. They have a cabaret room. They have a room where you can strip down to your underwear. And they have two massive dance floors on the first level. So they were hosting a kink and non-monogamy night, and it was me and my two other straight friends. One who we ended up not converting, but he ended up joining monogamy years later. But we were all there for a boys trip, and we were like, "Hey, let's check out this non-monogamy and kink night at this gay club." So we paid the extra $10. We went into the room, and it was swingers and queer people and kinksters, and the environment was just so freeing and liberating. I remember I was talking to this couple, and I was basically just trying to understand how this dynamic worked. And the wife was like, "Yeah, we can make out." And I was like, "Wait, we're allowed to do that? That's okay." And she was like, "Yeah, I'm an adult. I'm attracted to you. You're an adult. You're attracted to me. We can make out." And I just couldn't like conceptually understand that type of freedom because I was raised Southern Baptist in a very traditional religious home. So now
Mm,
just being not thrown, but this was like one of my first times ever going to a gay club too. So, and I'm still identifying as straight, and
yeah,
now being introduced to kink and not introduced to kink. I knew about kink before, but being introduced to non-monogamy,
yeah,
this was a life-changing moment for me. And like the freedom and like the acceptance and the love in that space just really brought me in. And I know that a lot of people think that people turn to non-monogamy for sex, and I think that's perfectly okay. Like, I also love the sex aspect that comes with like non-monogamy, but I also love the community aspect and the idea that just like some people bond over football and other people bond over books and other people bond over drag shows, our community bonds over sex and sexuality. And like that's
yeah,
not the only thing we do with each other. We go get food, we watch shows, we text each other, we're each other emotional support. But what brings us all together is our shared love of like sex and sexuality. So over
mhm,
the next couple months, me and Nat started hosting. Well, first we started going to play parties in Milwaukee, and then we were like, "Hey, why don't we host our own play parties?" They were rough. We didn't know what we were doing. We were only non-monogamous for like 2 months at that time. Oh, I forgot. We went to Atlanta in between, and we went to a sex club in Atlanta together, and had a good experience with that. We brought back to Milwaukee. We started going to the Milwaukee kink club that had swinger nights. I want to say like every weekend. Like we stopped going out dancing because we were so in
mm,
the sex club slash kink club space. We tried to host our own, wasn't great. We were 22-year-olds with, would you say like 2 months of experience being like in the non-monogamous community? We definitely didn't pay
wow,
our dues and
wow,
like learn what to do and how to do it. But then we started traveling. We started going to Houston and Miami and New Orleans and back to Atlanta, and we started going to all these swingers clubs, and we started picking up little things that we wanted to bring back to our parties. This party had a wristband system that was really good for consent. This party does a consent talk that was really good. And then we started getting people from Chicago to drive 90 miles up to come to our sex parties in Milwaukee in our one bedroom apartment. And they started to grow really nicely. And then we went to Spain, and then we were introduced to the European scene, which was a lot queer, which was really cool.
mm.
And then we went to Toronto, which was also a lot queer, and that's where I discovered my bisexuality. Do you mind if I tell
Huh.
a very explicit story real quick?
Please, we love explicit stories here, and I was gonna ask you about your journey with your sexuality. So yeah, let's hear.
So, first and foremost, my journey with my sexuality started with you and your podcast.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so I discovered 2 bi guys.
Another convert, a two by guy convert.
I was
I
I
am trying to convert, unlike you, I am trying to convert as many people as possible to bisexuality and non-monogamy. That's my mission. Okay, go ahead.
so, for a long time, I guess, with my not to, like, take over this conversation, but for, like, a long time with my bisexuality, behaviorally, I was very bi. I had mass partners who I would interact and play with for since like my freshman or sophomore year in college. So since I was 18, 19. But
Mm.
I identified as straight, and I would always come up with justifications to myself of like, this is why I'm still straight. It's almost like the funny memes where the guys are like, well, we had our socks on, so it doesn't count. But I would come up with
Yeah.
these like rationality to myself that like I'm still straight, and I thought that my bisexuality threatened and interfered with my masculinity. Um,
Mm.
so
Yeah.
I discovered your podcast because I was doing a think piece on Frank Ocean and his bisexual songs. And what is the name of that album? Natalie, do you remember the album that like is very bisexual? This is like the second album that came out by Frank Ocean.
Blonde.
Yeah, so Blonde. I was doing a think piece on Blonde that I was writing up for Medium. And I was like, well, I need to get into the mind of a bisexual man to understand and like do a think piece on this. So I started listening to your podcast, and the things you were talking about really resonated with me. And the fact that like bisexuality doesn't threaten your masculinity, and that bisexuality is still a valid identity, and it doesn't mean that you're gay. Because I knew I wasn't gay. I knew that I was very much attracted to women and femmes, but I didn't know growing up Southern Baptist, I didn't know there were other options out there. And even at this point that we were still non-monogamous, we only went to very heteronormative swinger clubs. So all the
Mhm.
people that we interacted with were quote unquote straight, or all the men that I interacted with were quote unquote straight. So I didn't have that bi representation until your podcast. and then showed me that, like, hey, you can be bisexual and on a spectrum of bisexual, that you can have a preference for femmes and women. Because I knew that I had a strong
Right.
preference for a certain gender expression. I had a strong preference for femininity, but that doesn't mean I'm not bisexual just because I like one gender expression more than the other. So then,
Right.
listen to your podcast. Me and Nat went to Pride for the first time in 2022, and then the fall of 2022? We went to Toronto. We went to a massive house party, and me and Nat met this femdom and her two max subs. So me and Nat were playing together on one of the floor mattresses, and the femdom walks over and she's like, "Hey, can me and my subs watch?" And we were like, "Yeah, go for it." And then they were like, "Hey, can we touch?" So they started touching. We slowly started interacting. Then we had a conversation about what we consent to, what we don't, and all three of them identified as bisexual. I think pansexual, but all three of them identified as queer. Nat was like, "Hey, I'm bisexual," and I was like, "Oh, I'm straight." But then during the course of the orgy, I guess, the five some, Nat was off of one of the subs, and me, the film Dom, and the other sub were playing together. This is going to get very graphic. So
Love it.
the film Dom was getting fucked by one of the subs while I'm underneath her eating her out. And the penis
Mhm.
pops out and it just happens to like land on my lips. And I was like, well, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to go for it. And I started to suck his dick and he pulls it off and he's like, hey man, you told me you were straight. Is everything okay? I didn't mean to violate your consent. And I was like, oh, no, no. Like, I voluntarily did that. And I was like, I kind of like it.
Uh-huh.
So this
Wow.
turned into all three of us interacting and playing together. And then Nat and the other sub joined it back in. And then all five of us had an interaction. The next day, we went to another play party in Toronto. Had my second no, this is not my second bisexual experience. I had bisexual experiences in college. Had my second recent bisexual experience. And then
Uh-huh.
we had a 13-hour car ride back home and a lot of time to talk to each other. And that was like, hey, John, you're going all out for pride. You're buying like bisexual flags for me. You're writing think pieces about Frank Ocean and Lady Gaga's Poker Face, these bi anthems. Uh, you just had three sexual partners who are max identifying. Maybe we should have a conversation about your identity. And I was like, yeah. And she
Yeah.
also knew that I had like mass partners before. So she was like,
Right.
maybe we should have a conversation about your bisexuality. And Nat's loving and acceptance of me being bi and accepting that identity and celebrating that identity was also very essential for me in loving myself and accepting myself. Because I know there is a lot of
Cool.
like cis femmes who still have a lot of like biphobia to their partners.
Yeah, cool. I wanna hear your side of that in a moment, Natalie. But
Yeah.
like it's so common what you're talking about of like, oh well, I'm more on this side of the spectrum, therefore like you can justify straightness for longer. And I even saw something on Instagram this morning where it was like a comment on something like, well, I'm 90% straight and most people think being bi is 50-50, so I don't want to identify as bi. But it's like that's a misunderstanding of what bi is. And actually like there's so much diversity within bi, and it's amazing that you got to the point where you were like, okay, I'm within that umbrella and I'm over here. Like like you figured out your place in it. I think we should just orchestrate as many scenarios as possible where a dick falls on the lips of a straight man and see what he does. That would be an interesting experiment.
Yeah,
It's a
and
great position to be in.
they just have to make a decision.
If people had to make that decision, I bet many people would go,
Yeah.
let me try it. And then they would realize it's kind of fun. Okay, go on.
Yeah, and that's like the one really interesting thing about like Julia Shaw's work. I think you might have had her on the pod. Yeah, you did have her on the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's actually how I discovered her work was that behaviorally a lot of people are bisexual.
Yeah.
And what I kind of realized throwing sluts, because we have this very bi-centered party that welcomes all gender and sexual orientations and identities, we get a lot of people who traditionally identified as gay or lesbian who come to our parties and they're like, hey, I'm actually bi,
Mm,
but like I have a preference for people who have the same gender expression as I do. But
yeah.
because there's so much biphobia in the gay and lesbian space. I don't tell people that I'm attracted to multiple gender expressions, and I like really, really hope that in because I don't want to be ostracized from my community. But then they come to sluts and they're like, well, this is my people. I found my people.
Yeah.
So our party ecstasy, we're holding at a very traditional gay bar that has historically been a gay bar. And a lot of their crowd came to our first party on January 18th, I think it was, or January 19th. And we're like, oh, these are like a lot of like gay men who are coming to like a bisexual party. Let's see like how they like it. But then me and Natalie started having separate conversations with these guys, and they're like, yeah, I'm like 80% gay, or I'm 80% attracted to the same gender. I have a partner of the same gender. I only hang out in circles of people of the same gender. But
Yeah.
I'm bi, and like I never truly feel validated at these spaces when it's all gay men. But then when I saw that this was a bi-center party being held here for like the first time, I wanted to check it out, and now I feel validated. And that's been an experience with our normal sluts party too, where we get a lot of people who come in and for the first time they get to explore their bi identity, not just from the cis hetero presenting couples, but from the gay and
But
lesbian
from
presenting couples.
Right. It's amazing how, like, I mean, it's great to center bi and the word bi and use it, but it's also like great to have like a party that's about fluidity and exploration that isn't even part of a label, so that people who might identify more with gay or lesbian can still come and think, okay, I'm gonna explore my boundaries and what does that mean? And maybe I'm a fluid gay person or something like that. Natalie,
Yeah.
tell me about your sexuality and your journey. You said you identify as bi, but like when did you know that? What's your journey been like? And then I want to hear about how you two met and your relationship.
Yeah, so the context for me coming out as bi is I came out when I was around 19, but I hadn't even had sex for the first time until I was 18. So I think I was just kind of someone where, I came from this very traditional Roman Catholic household. And, all of a sudden I'm discovering my sexuality and unpacking sexual shame and unpacking like the gender norms that are pushed upon women regarding like not being able to enjoy sex, and you shouldn't want to hook up with guys and do stuff like that. And like weirdly enough, being queer wasn't necessarily something that was seen as bad in my family's eyes. Like we had queer relatives and friends and everything like that. So I didn't really, when I was kind of like thinking about, experimenting with girls and being bisexual, it didn't really feel like I wasn't into the idea of having this emotional coming out moment. I wanted me having sex with a woman to be viewed the same way as with a man. Like just
Hmm.
this is, oh, she was dating a guy this month, now it's a girl, now it's a non-binary person, like, and for in regards to coming out to my friends, that's how I really just wanted it to go. So
As
that
it like normal, not a big deal, just
yes,
like
yeah.
standard.
Um
Yeah.
and I understand like that's a very affirming and validating experience for people to have those more emotional moments, especially in regards to like family of origin and stuff like that. But for me, I was just kind of like, I told my friends, I was like, yeah, I have my Tinder set to girls now. And they were like, okay. Um,
Cool.
and then it was actually funny. I helped someone else on their queer journey. One of my friends was like, well, you have your Tinder set to girls and you're straight. And I was like, no. And now she's happily been dating a woman for like years. Um,
That's
but
funny.
basically, like, I was on Tinder for girls, but had never quite acted on it or anything. And I was, just dating guys and everything. And I was with this guy. And eventually, my best friend was like, hey, so I saw you on Tinder. And I was like, oh, okay, so you're on Tinder for girls too.
Mm.
And she basically proposed. She was like, "Hey, would you like to figure this out together?" So yeah, we started experimenting, and it's very interesting because that's what led John and I into non-monogamy too, is very shortly after starting to hook up with that friend, I got with John like October 2019, and then flash forward to when we were more seriously dating in summer of 2020. I was like, hey, I'm bi. I haven't had a lot of opportunities to explore being bi. Do you mind if I still hook up with this friend that I used to hook up with? And he was like, yeah, I don't see an issue with that. And I was like, okay, cool.
Hmm.
And then more time progressed, and I was like, fuck, I kind of miss hooking up with masked people too. And I was like so confused because I was like, I love John and I want to be with him, but I just like, I miss sex with other people.
Yeah.
And, we were in a really healthy dynamic, and he loves me a lot and cares about me a lot. So I felt comfortable enough saying, like, hey, this is just
Yeah.
how I'm feeling, and I don't know why, and I don't understand it, but this is something I miss. And he was like, honestly, yeah, I don't have an issue with that. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Cool.
that started it
Two
all.
two things that makes it the first earlier, like, it's funny that in both of your stories, there are straight people who are desiring fluidity within a straight label, like the friend you mentioned, Natalie, it's like, "Oh, well, you're have it your Tinder set to women and you're straight." Like, in her mind, like, that's still possible, and which it is, like, whatever, you can call yourself straight and do whatever you want, but, like, there's a desire for that, for fluidity while maintaining the straight label, which is just interesting to me. And I think it points to like there's so much fluidity under the surface, and the labels and the stigma are holding people back from exploring it because they don't want to completely change their identity and completely change who they are. And what they don't realize is like you're not completely changing who you are, you're just using a word to describe a very normal thing. And then the other thing I like about that is like it also is a great story about the fluidity of relationships. And I think it's great to explore sex with your friends because you're comfortable. And why not? It's nice. How did that work out? Are you two still friends?
Yes, and yeah, that's exactly how I feel too. Is That's why I love being poly. Is we don't have to like try and fit round pegs into square holes for every relationship. Because that was
Right.
such a thing when everything was out in the open, and me and this friend were like, sexual tension is like, I had some people in my life that were like, no, this is gonna go horribly wrong. You're never gonna be friends again, and you guys are best friends. And then I had other people who, are still my much closer friends who were like, yeah, I mean, I don't see an issue. You guys are already super open about everything, and
Hmm.
go for it. And lo and behold, it's like we both were emotionally intelligent enough to be able to hook up and be friends. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense for me considering I hook up with like most of my friends in Chicago now. But yeah, like that definitely is a part of polyamory that resonates a lot with me because I have
Yeah.
I have this whole friend group where we're pretty much all bi girls. So it's like I've hooked up with a couple of them, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and yeah, it's supernatural for me.
I also love that like it makes sense to me that that bisexuality can lead to opening things up because it's like, okay, we're together, but I want to explore this other side of me that like, John is a man, not a woman. And so like, and I want to explore that this side of me that is attracted to women. And that made sense to you, John. So you like said, okay. I think that that applies to so many other things beyond gender, and yet people think about it differently. Like monogamous people tend to think about it differently, where it's like you can love your partner and get a lot of great things from that relationship, but not necessarily everything. Like, isn't there always stuff that's interesting to explore that isn't exactly what your partner is or what they love to do, or like just like something different and something novel, even if it's not gender, is also what I like to explore about
Mm.
polyamory, like, or non-monogamy, like kink or different energies or dom and sub. Like, there's always something, and yet when it's not about gender, sometimes that's harder for people to say yes to opening up.
So I actually have a thought on that. So, like, I think the rise in bisexuality and the rise of gender queerness and the rise of queer labels and like Gen Z are all collaborated. I don't know if that's the word to
Uh,
use, but the idea that once you start seeing through binaries, because also like more Gen Z is open to the idea of like non-monogamy, the idea that like,
yeah,
hey, I don't have to be a man or a woman, or I don't have to like only men or women or my gender or different gender. You start understanding how, I guess, how fake and socially constructed all these rules are. And then the idea that in the world of 7 billion people, the idea that you're only going to be attracted sexually to one person for the rest of your life, or one person at a time, or that you're only going to be attracted to one gender expression, or that even like your own personal gender doesn't have any fluidity to it. I think you start to realize that that's not true. And a lot of this is socially constructed. I'm not one of those
right.
bisexuals who believe that like everybody's bi, but I do think that like if we lived in a society where the status quo was open to fluidity, I believe the vast majority of people would be bi. And I think
Mhm.
that I don't remember the exact poll, but there was like a poll in like YouGov that was looking at bisexual people between like 18 and 25 in the United States, Germany, and Israel, if I got the three countries correct. And like over time, more and more people are identifying as bisexual. And I think it's because we're starting to realize that like the status quo is very socially constructed. And if we can kind of see through that that veil, we can kind of find true authenticity in a way that
Yeah,
I think queerness and like non-monogamy allows you to do. I don't know if that
yeah,
rant made sense, but like that's something I've just been sitting on for a
Well,
long time.
yeah.
that's exactly what
Natalie.
I was gonna say. Is I think a lot of bisexual people have an openness in like multiple regards. Gender queerness, non-monogamy, because we're so used to not fitting in a binary. Like you go to a straight club and it's just bad experiences, but then if you go to like very particular gay or lesbian bars, you can also have a very bad experience of like one of the really meaningful conversations I had with somebody at one of our events was a man came up to me and said, this is the first time I've been in a space where I was actually celebrated as a bi man. And he was just telling me, as somebody where most of his friends are gay men and he goes to all these gay men events, there's always this air of like, oh, you're bi? Yeah, sure. Or like not really believing or making a joke. And even his own partner, who was a gay man, was like, yeah, even I had a hard time really conceptualizing this and like understanding it fully. So, yeah, I think there's kind of that level of like we're so used to just not fitting into either box that maybe we're just open to uh just kind of like pushing the whole system down and like reimagining.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's
yeah.
and it's so fun because on the other end of the spectrum, we have like a lot of cis couples from like the swinger community who comes to our parties. And it's funny watching the progression of like their outfits and like their expressions from like when we did the Barbie party in January. It was still like very heteronormative. But over the course of the months, because like Sluts Party is very gender fluid with the participants who comes to our events, you start seeing like cis men start wearing lingerie. And I was talking to like one cis man who used to like wear blue jeans and like a button up to the early parties. And he's like, I feel pretty, like I feel sexy and like a sheer top and like a
Mhm.
jockstrap. And you also start seeing like more and more people from these traditional cis couples where like the man identified as straight and the mass person identified as straight and the femme person identified as bi. You start seeing more and more of them identifying as bi. It was really funny. So back in August, we have this couple that we're friends with, and we're out in a group, and Nat and me are hanging out with them, and like Nat kisses him, and like me and her make eye contact, and I'm like, "Hey, are you bi?" And he's like, "Oh, no, 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 like I'm not bi," and he reacts like very defensively. But then he's like, I think he felt bad. I think he thought he offended me, so he was like, "Well, I can give you a quick kiss," and I was like, It's okay, man. If you're straight, you're straight." But fast forward 7 months, I'm not good at math. We just did ecstasy in January, and he responds to a Sluts Party story, and he was like, "This is so fun that there's a bi-centered event that celebrates bisexual like sexuality. I wish there was a bi place I could go to every weekend in Chicago." And in my head, I was like, "Wait, you identified as straight last summer, and now you're saying you want to go to a bi event every weekend in Chicago?" He never said that I'm bi, but like in my head, I'm like, you're canonically in my head canon, you're bi now. If you're asking to go to
Mhm.
a bi event every weekend, and we have like so many people who,
You might be bi.
yeah, people who it's and they realize that like I can have a preference. I can explore my
Right.
fluidity in a way. And I think that like that's the thing I want to talk to you about with Gen Z. I think
Yeah.
you do two things for people. They're willing to explore their sexual identity. I think if you give them a space that's physically safe, or they know that they're not going to get harassed or touched unwantedly, and you give them a space that is culturally safe, where they know that they can express their sexuality, that they can express their bisexuality without being stigmatized and slut
Right.
shamed for it. You give people those two permissions of safety, that feeling of safety. A lot of people are willing to like explore their sexual identity. That was a funny thing we realized with sluts was while we got a little bit of the swinger community, we didn't get like a whole bunch of it because they were like, "Hey, I'm coming to these dance parties, but there's no place to fuck. Like, what are we doing here?"
Yeah.
We got like a lot of couples who just like stumbled on our boosted ads or like found our Instagram page. And they were like, "Well, we've been having conversations about opening up a relationship, but we're too scared to go to a sex club. And we're too
Right.
scared to like meet up with a couple in field. And that seems like a lot." But then they came to the Sluts dance party and they were like, "Oh my God, I can do this. I have permission to do this. And there's other people out here doing this." And there's a lot of people who are not the age range you would think of like a conventional swingers club. It's people in their mid 20s to like early 30s.
Yeah.
Like they come here and they're like, "Okay, I'm coming here for the rave aspect, but since sexuality is
Right.
expressed, I'm allowed to be sexual." And then we started hosting like mention play parties, and we started hosting play parties in our apartment that were more open to the public. And a lot of these couples started coming where this was their first play party. And because we had that permission to be bisexual, there wasn't strict gender norms where you have to come and everybody here's a swaps. The idea is that like you can play with whoever you want to play. We started watching these couples explore their sexuality in a way that I think that not to like pat ourselves on the
Yeah.
back, but in a way that I don't think they would be able to in any other space that I know of.
Right. Right. It's like you really do need to create that safe space both within the space to feel safe and not be creepy or have, make sure everything is consensual, but also like safety to explore this and have it not change everything about who you are or what you want, or like people are like, well, I want to be with my partner or marry a woman, and it's like, yeah, you can explore and play and have fun with your sexuality and still have those things that you've always wanted. Like it doesn't have to necessarily change it. And if it opens up new avenues, why not go with that. I think it's also, I love what you're creating in that there's the play party aspect and then there's also the rave dance party. It's like, yeah, a lot of swingers events I've been to are older. Like I'm the youngest person there and I'm already older than you two. And I always wonder like why that is. And also a lot of play parties I've been to, you don't always have sex. You just are in a sexy environment, and then sometimes I feel like, oh, well, I should have played with someone, or I'm sad that that didn't happen. But the more I've gone to, the more I've been like, no, this is going to be a sexy, fun night. I don't have to have sex with someone. If I do, great. If I don't, it'll be a fun night anyway. And when I go in with that mindset, it's always fun no matter what. And I love that sort of these rave parties take sex off the table. So there's like no pressure, but it's still a sexy environment and it's still sex positive and it's still kinky, or you can wear things you couldn't wear to some clubs. Like, I like that you're creating that. I think, do you, let me ask you this, Natalie, like, or whoever, what do you see from Gen Z that's different from other generations? Like, are they particularly attracted to that aspect of it, or what? Why are they into this? Or you?
I feel like why so many spaces tend to attract older couples is simply that those people have kind of been doing this for decades, or at least talking about it, and they have this comfortability to be able to just like go to a sex club and do whatever and not have any inhibitions about that. And I feel like the reason why, even when we were doing the play parties in our apartment, why we resonated so much more with younger people isn't just because we are young, but it's because of this like no pressure environment. Like even our
Hmm.
play parties was very much like, oh, you don't know if you're bi yet? You can find out, but like you don't have to put a label on it. You don't know if you want to play tonight? No worries. We're gonna be chatting in the kitchen like all night. Come by. Like, you guys are still
Yeah.
figuring out, are you open, poly, what? Like, no
Yeah.
worries. No one's gonna pressure you to do something that you're not ready for. And we kind of became these people where, people would come back month after month and just slowly open up and discover, like, oh my god, I'm poly, I'm demisexual, I'm bi, I like group play, I like kink. Like, it's been so cool to see all of our friends kind of discover so much. And I think that's what Sluts Party really has too, is it's like, we don't have to go into this space and be like exactly sure of everything we don't want to do and what all of our identities are, because yeah, most people who are in their 20s, like, we're still figuring it out. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't figure out I was demisexual and polyamorous until like a year and a half ago. And I'm sure I will continue to have more and more revelations and everything. So yeah, I feel like so many younger couples are scared away from it because they don't have that like welcoming and safe environment. And
Yeah.
again, if you've been dating someone for like 20 years, I think it's a lot easier to be like, I want to fuck other people. Like, we've done everything, we've had kids,
Right.
whatever. Like,
Let's just
versus,
get to it.
yeah,
Yeah.
versus like, like that was me when I first
Exploring.
started dating John. I was like, I really like this guy and I love him a lot, but I'm like, he could potentially think I'm like fucking insane for being like, I want to fuck another man.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
funny enough, Justin Lay Miller, who wrote the "Tell Me What You Want: The Psychology of Sexual Fantasies," I was listening to his podcast, and he was talking about why is people around like middle age who like open their relationships are more likely to have a threesome. And kind of Natalie, exactly what you're saying, they're more likely to say, fuck it. They have a sense of identity that they already know who they are, they're comfortable in their relationship. It's easier to have these type of conversations. Whereas like people in their 20s and like even like 30s are still coming into like who I am, and like my actions still have social consequences where like I still care about what my friends or family say to me if I tell them that like I
Mm.
have an open relationship, where somebody in like their 50s, they may still care, but like that weight of someone else in society redefining who you are is lessened. I also think that like there's this reality where swinger clubs and older clubs market to like older generations because like that's where the money is, if we're being honest. Like
Mhm.
Mm.
economically, I don't know if like a lot of people in their 20s can like drop 120, $130 to go out for a night at a play party
Right.
versus like a sluts dance party. We're charging like 15, 20 bucks. It's not a play
Oh,
party, but it's still like a very like sexual space where like you
yeah.
can come to like our event, you can explore your sexuality, you can still make out with different genders, you can wear revealing clothes, you can express yourself. It's affordable. We market, we say Gen Z, we want you. We say bisexuals, we want you. Natalie actually put on this like amazing, created this amazing Instagram post that like I would say went almost viral. It was Uncle Sam saying with the bi flag instead of USA flag, and he goes like, "Bisexuals, we want you," and he's like pointing, and like people started sharing that, and it like
Wow.
got like 14,000 views or something like that. And I
Wow.
think that Gen Z and bisexuals seeing that like, hey, this community wants us to come in and they're marketing towards us makes them come there. And I think the last thing is that we don't discriminate between couples and singles, which I know that like is a big thing in a lot of swinger spaces. And
Yeah.
since we're watching Gen Z, they're getting married at older ages, they're also like more likely to be single. This allows single people to come in and like find other sex positive people in the space. We have these friends, let's call them A and B. That's actually the first initials of both their first names. Uh,
Okay.
A and B both discovered Sluts Party in June and July, and they both came single. A is non-binary, B is a pansexual woman, and they found each other through Sluts Party. And before they were like very timid, they were like, I don't know if this is for me. I don't know if like non-monogamy is something I'm interested in. And then like they started interacting in space. They found other like-minded people, and now they're like fucking like rabbits. They're always like having
Yeah.
an orgy, or they're like leaving Sluts Party early with like another couple to like go hook up with them. And it's like
Yeah.
really fun because like Natalie was saying, she was scared to bring non-monogamy up to me. But when you meet at a Sluts Party event, that fear is kind of taken away. That anxiety is gone because you're like, hey, I'm with like-minded people. I know
Right.
this person is at least comfortable coming to a sex positive rave, so they're probably open to the idea of like non-monogamy.
Yeah. I have a question on that, but on the fact that you're getting so much traction with like a buy post going viral, and that you're getting so many people coming to the parties. I mean, you said there's hundreds of people at each party. Like that's so impressive. And I just to throw this out there to anyone considering hosting buy specific or buy tailored events around the country, there's an audience for it. Take their lead, and you can find you'll have people showing up. I was just gonna say, like, I remember when I started going to play parties and other like sex positive kind of dance spaces, like I was like a deer in headlights. Like it takes a little bit of getting used to. And the more you go and the less expectations and the less pressure you have and the safer you feel and the more you're with a like-minded community, like each of those things starts to add up and build till you get to a place where you're just like comfortable. And ironically, when you aren't trying to fuck, that's when you often fuck the most. And so I love that story of them sort of transitioning to that. What would you say to people who are listening to this and they're like intrigued and interested but scared to actually go, or worried about like how do you participate, or what am I going to do when I get there? How do you encourage the timid?
I would say so. One of the things we do that's really helpful is we have a wristband system. For green, I'm open to being approached. Red, I don't want to be approached. And then yellow is somewhere in the middle. So that makes it super easy. You can change it any time in the night if you're super, don't want to get approached. Like, I have a friend who is in a monogamous relationship and she's my biggest fan. So she just has her red wristband and we dance and we have fun. But, you can also signify, like, yeah, I am open to making friends. And it just kind of it feels like Sluts is a little bit of all these people where we were just kind of like misfits and we didn't quite fit into every single space. And a
Mhm.
lot of the spaces that are like typically catered to just, the white gay cis man. So I think with that being said, especially with so many of us being non-monogamous too, like it just we have a particular type of audience where people aren't like in a typical club. They're actually genuinely trying to meet people and make friends, because for so many people it's like, these our audience aren't these people where like we get some ravers, but it's typically more people where this is like the one time a month they go out and they're really looking to meet like-minded people, maybe see if they
Mhm.
can find like a partner or play partner. So there really is this very welcoming atmosphere of like, if you approach someone, if you say hi, I like your outfit, it's received really well. Totally not like
Mm.
the straight club scene where you're like not
Uh-huh.
supposed to talk to other people.
Yeah. That's usually my way in is I'll like say like most people I'm interested in have something that like visually that I'm
Yeah.
interested in and I'll comment on that thing and that's often like a nice icebreaker. Yeah, go ahead, John.
I guess like what I'll add to it too is that more generally, if you're not in Chicago, we're not like promoting Sluts Party. If you're like, how do I get into this? One, admittedly, if you're not in a big city, it is hard.
Mhm.
Coming from Milwaukee, which is like a medium-sized city, we had to like always travel to have like really good experiences. There is like a really good club in Milwaukee. It geared a lot older than us. But what I will say is that one, if you're in a big city, there's a dating app called Field, Feeld. That's great. That's how we got our start. I also would say that it's a lot easier and a lot more low pressure to go to a club or go to a big sex party than it is to go to a small sex party or a date. And like how I explain this to people is that
Hmm.
you go on a date with another couple or another person, and like if that person has an expectation to play, there may be a pressure that like, well, I went out, I met this person, I have to take them home. Or if you go to a small play party where there's 8 people and 7 of them are playing, you're like, okay, I guess
Yeah.
I'll play too, or like I'm just gonna awkwardly sit here. Versus if you
Yeah.
go to a club that seems intimidating because there's 300, 400 people, there's always going to be countless people that you can just chit chat with. There's always going to be 100 people, 150 people who aren't playing, who you can just
Right.
talk to and pick their brain and like join the community. And then if the couple who you're talking to is like, hey, we want to go play, they can go meet another couple who wants to go play. Or if you're single, the person you're interacting with, if they want to go play, they can go meet other people who want to go play. And you can go meet other people who are just chilling. Cause like we've been to massive swinger parties. We went to the New Year's Eve party in Collect. We've been to both the parties in Miami, Trapeze and Miami Velvet. We've been to Atlanta's Collect. We've been to Houston, Texas has a crazy amount of sex clubs. There's like 7 in Houston. And like
Wow.
there's always people hanging out who are just up for a chit chat. And because it is a sex party, people are more receptive of meeting new people versus like at a different club where the expectation is like, well, I'm just partying with the people I came with.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That makes sense. I totally agree that like sometimes the smaller parties there is more pressure and a bigger scene creates some amount of anonymity. Like you don't have to be seen or do anything. You can just kind of wander and like watch and meet a few people here and there, or sit at the bar, or sit on the couch and just like chill with someone. Sometimes people are even like playing video games at a big party I've been to. It's like there's a lot of variety, and you can just sort of find who you are in that space and be yourself, and there's no pressure. Why call it sluts? Because you mentioned earlier about like it's a space that's free of slut shaming, so I assume it's like reclaiming that word. Like why how did you choose that name and why?
So that was me. I came up with the name Sluts. So I went to school for philosophy as a background, and like everything
Ooh.
has to have a deeper meaning. So it was supposed to mean sexually liberated, united together, sluts.
I
It
love
never
it.
stuck. Yeah, no one knows that. We had one reel where we talked about it, and it never picked up. So sluts just worked. I
Could be the
want
title of this podcast episode. That could
to
work.
please do. Like, I
Sexually
need
liberated, united together. I like it.
And me from
something.
the
I need.
marketing background, I liked that it was like something like eye catching and in your face. Like it always catches people's attention. Just like, oh, sluts, okay.
Sluts.
And it's a good
Yeah.
litmus test too, because if I tell you, yeah, I host an event called LUTS Party, and you're like, huh, cool. Even if you're not like the most sex positive person, versus like you say to some people, and it's like, oh my god,
You can gauge their
yeah,
interest in the party just from how they react to the name. And it has the S is a dollar sign. Is it still that? Why
Yeah,
yeah.
it is.
why dollar sign? Is that like a Gen Z thing?
Well,
Censorship, honestly.
yeah, it originally
Ah,
started for like, Instagram censorship and that sort of thing. And
Smart.
yeah, we've just kind of kept it going, and now it's like a fun little brand item.
The one thing
Smart.
I'll give Natalie is that originally, because I have a lot of religious trauma, I wanted the party to be sinner sanctuary, and that was like people are going to get burnt out of like the religious theme really fast. Like it's
Uh-huh.
cool for one or two parties, but if every party is center sanctuary, people are going to be like, okay, I need
Yeah.
something new. Versus that idea was if we use sluts, that gives us a lot more versatility. I'm sorry, Natalie and Bree. Bree's the other member, founding member who's not here with us. Natalie and Bree came out with the idea of sluts, and they were like, it gives us a lot more versatility where we can have different themes throughout the month and we can have a center sanctuary party every year,
Yeah.
but like the party itself is not center sanctuary.
Yeah. Cool. Cool. Last question. We'll wrap it up, and then I want you to stick around for some Patreon bonus material. But what's the future of Sluts Party? Like, where do you guys want to take this? What do you have coming up on the horizon? Like, what's your mission for the future with this?
So like right now, we were scared that we were going to see like a drop in participation after this new regime took office in January.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how political I can get on your podcast, but
You
uh,
can mention him.
gotcha. So like we thought watching this homophobic, transphobic person take office that we were going to see a drop off in participation. But
Hmm.
me and Nat put together basically this post, this carousel saying that, like, hey guys, as long as we can, Sluts is going to be here. And like, now it's more important than ever to form community and be around other queer people, be around other bi people, and like feel seen and validated in space while they're trying to use the federal government to erase the existence of trans people, be in a place where being trans is celebrated, being a place where being sex positive is celebrated, being a sex worker is celebrated is so essential. And that post also just like took off. Everybody was resharing it. Random people who we didn't even know, who I think didn't know Sluts Party, reshared it. And like Sluts Party has only been growing since um the Trump election in like November. So right now we don't know where.
Cool.
Right now we want the roots to always be Chicago, but we would love to one day take it to like a New York, or you guys have so much stuff in New York, you probably don't need Suns Party. But maybe
Come
some
to
other.
Los Angeles. We have
Yeah,
a lot
Los
here too.
Angeles.
We have a lot in Los Angeles too, but we could always use more.
Yeah, like LA or like Miami, and like even if it's safe, maybe like more Republican states where there's these very queer cities like Atlanta, New Orleans, Charlotte, where there's high populations of queer people who don't have a lot of spaces where they can be queer and sex positive. One day we would love to be able to take it there, but like right now, our
Yeah.
core is building and solidifying this community in Chicago and the Midwest. We get people who drive in from like Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Detroit, Kentucky, St. Louis, and all the cities in
Wow.
between. So it's really like a Midwest cultural moment. That's really cool because
Wow.
the Midwest is not known for sex positivity like the coast is. Coast are.
Well, it makes sense, and like it is hard if you don't live in a city, like, and obviously to put on parties like these, you have to go to where the people are. Like if you put it on in the middle of whatever in the middle of the country, you may not get enough to make it worth it. But I'm working, I'm a coach now for bi men, and I'm working with a lot of people all over the country, and many are not in a big city. And this is the biggest struggle for them, is like finding community and finding like fun things to do to explore their sexuality like exactly this is what they're looking for, but it's nowhere around where they live. And so for the moment, I'm like, well, maybe it's worth going to a city to visit, to explore this stuff once in a while. But the more you guys expand, the better. That would be great too.
And that what you
uh
just said. Oh, and just
yeah.
like final thought, what you just said mirrored why me and Natalie moved to Chicago. We loved Milwaukee, but we wanted a space where there was a lot of queer people, and especially for me, queer black man, because there's not a lot of visible queer black men in Milwaukee. So being validated in that, in my masculinity, in my blackness, and my queerness, and my bisexuality, all at the same time, was like really essential. Yeah.
Yeah. And so last question, I said last, but this is Natalie, any final thoughts? And also, if not, I just want to ask you, since it came up earlier and we love to validate bi men on this podcast, that's the whole goal. What do you like about bi men? Or bi people in general? Like I just liked your perspective on that.
Yeah, I'd love to hit on bi men in particular too, because that's something that I don't want like it's one of those thought processes where like I just can't wrap my head around, especially women and bi women who are hateful towards bi men and homophobic and biphobic. I think something like there's so many good traits of bi men. Like I think one thing I've noticed is they tend to, because they've unpacked so much with their bisexuality, be very comfortable in their masculinity, not have a lot of
Mm,
toxically masculine traits, like just
yeah.
being able to be in queer spaces, be in more hetero spaces too together. um I've really loved getting to explore group play with John too, as well as a bi man. um and
Yeah.
yeah, just overall, like we are saying, the open-mindedness with bi people is just a really cool trait.
Cool. I love it. Thank you for answering that one. I think our audience will like to hear that. Any final thought from you, John, on that, or why you like bi women or anything?
Oh yeah, like I enjoy like bi and like or films in general
Or
who
bi
are
men?
queer just because and bi man like
And by
I
men,
enjoy
I shouldn't even gender it. Yeah.
I enjoy people who are willing to like help deconstruct gender norms and like rigid ideas of like, well, this is how we have to behave because we were happened to be born with like a penis or a vagina. And the idea that like
Yeah.
we are allowed to express our sexuality and our gender expression across our fluidity. Not to go on another rant, but like there's not enough conversations about how performing masculinity is hard. It is a
Hmm.
constant thing, especially like in hetero circles. It is a constant thing. You have to choose the right alcohol, or else that threatens your masculinity. You have to wear the right clothes, or that threatens your masculinity. You can't have certain colors in your outfit, or that threatens your masculinity. You're constantly working to like uphold these unrealistic standards of like what it means to be a man that you're always on the fell short of. And I think that being in like queer spaces and like dating queer femmes for me personally have allowed me to say that like they've allowed me to say like, hey, you don't have to perform this hyper masculinity all the time, especially like as a black man with hyper masculinity put on me so much. Queer femmes
Yeah.
say that like, hey, you don't always have to perform this hyper masculinity all the time. It's okay to just be John. And dating straight femmes and straight women throughout college, a lot of them have a really bad habit of upholding patriarchal gender norms in a way
Yeah.
that they don't admit. And like the way that I view it is like straight men uphold the patriarchy, but also like a lot of times straight women uphold the patriarchy and gender norms right underneath them. And they have these
Yeah.
expectations of what they want out of their mass partner, and they don't want to give you the same emotional care that like they don't believe that you're entitled to the same emotional care that like queer femmes and queer people in general do because they allow you to strip off that hyper masculinity and just be a human. Sorry, I tried not to go on a
Yeah.
rant.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm a bad
Well,
guy.
we'll have to leave it there because we're out of time. But I we might continue that in a moment. So if you're listening to this, the free version, I'm gonna stick around with John and Natalie on Patreon. You can subscribe there and listen to a little bit more. I would like to continue on that, and I'm also gonna ask them about some of the craziest, kinkiest, or most fun parties that they've thrown or things they've seen at those parties. So come over to Patreon to hear that. But for those of you ending with us now, thank you for listening, and thank you guys, John and Natalie, for being here and for sharing all this stuff about Sluts Party. Where last thing, where can people find more information on the party if they're interested?
So you can follow us on Instagram at Sluts Party Shy, all lowercase. And then you can also hear us talk more about sex and sex positivity on our podcast, the Funless Sex Podcast. We're on both TikTok and Instagram. TikTok is FWS Podcast, and then Instagram is the Funless Sex Podcast, all lowercase.
Cool. Awesome. All of that will be in the show notes. Check it out. And thanks again, John and Natalie of Sluts Party, for being on Two Bi Guys.
Thank you for having
Thank
us.
you.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye. Thanks for listening to this episode. As you just heard, there's more on Patreon. We talked more about the relationship between masculinity and bisexuality, as well as femininity and sexuality. We talked about fluidity in types of relationships and how those lines can be blurred. And also, I asked about the wildest and craziest things they have seen at play parties. So there's about 20 minutes of bonus material on patreon.com/Robert Brooks Cohen. Thanks for your support there. And thanks again for listening to Two Bi Guys. Two Bi Guys by One Bi Guy is produced and edited by me, Robert Brooks Cohen, and it was created by me and Alex Boyd. Our new logo art is by Caitlin Weinman. Our music is by Ross Mincer. To help support this podcast, visit patreon.com/Robert Brooks Cohen. You'll get full video episodes, early access, and bonus content. Visit robertbrookscohen.com to learn more about my coaching, my book, and my stand-up comedy. And thanks for listening to Two Bi Guys by One Bi Guy.